Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me again today. Glad to have you along. Looking forward to today's conversation with Denise Meyerson. Denise, I've been following for ages and she's a legend in the industry. She's a board member, CEO and management consultant with over 30 years board level experience, particularly in the education, training and workforce development industry. And previously, Denise led an education company that was sold to a listed company on the South African Stock Exchange. She's also been awarded Learning and Development Professional of the Year by the AITD, and she's one of the first 4 master trainers globally of the Lego Serious Play methodology, which is very, very cool. And I'm really looking forward to diving into that and the play for business stuff. But first, Denise, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. You make me sound like I'm 100 years old, but I think I nearly am.
I got to find a better way of doing that. So whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in Sydney, Australia.
Oh, magnificent. I lived there for a number of years. Wonderful city. I was even there during the Olympics. What a time to be there.
Wow.
Yeah, great time.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
So look, I gave a little bit of an intro, but for people listening, could you give us a little overview of your background, some of the things you've done that lead us up to the play for business side?
Thanks, Ben. I've been in education in total for over 30 years, so it's quite a substantial amount of time. So I don't take any offense when you make me sound ancient, because if listeners could see the color of my hair, it certainly does reflect my age. So I've always been passionate about making sure that when people learn, they learn with some enthusiasm. It makes an impact on their lives. They use it to transform themselves, not only professionally, but personally as well. So when I heard about this Lego Serious Play methodology, I didn't quite know what it was about, but thought I'll take my chances on it, got myself trained up, and we got the license at that stage for Australia. And then as I started using it, I really saw the power of what it can do, because people are building things, they're constructing things in their heads, they're expressing themselves, they're telling stories. And as they're doing this, more and more ideas are emerging. They're starting to process things that had been in their minds, but they hadn't articulated. So it's just incredible when you're in a session, when you see what happens there. Each time I'm either so excited and sometimes I'm even crying then, which is a very bad thing for a facilitator to do.
You've had an emotional breakthrough with them. So you mentioned 30 years. 30 years ago, training, learning, development was not Lego based, right?
No. 30 years ago, training was very sit down in the room, turn to page 10, and let's get going. PowerPoint.
Yes.
Another PowerPoint. That PowerPoint had just been invented, so if you were going to make use of it fully, 100 words on each slide, because there was no storage space on the discs and on those USB, so you couldn't make big PowerPoint decks anyway. There were no images. It took up too much space.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm thinking back to the days of PowerPoint training, and when someone made the slide spin in dramatically, that was always an ooh-ah moment. But I'm not sure if it's sunk in. Yeah.
Indeed.
So if I take you back to launching your first business, how did you choose a market to go with? Because I'm curious, that feeds into the play for business. When people launch a business, they should not just go to an area where there's no demand. So how did you work out what needed to be created, and then how did you reapply those lessons for play for business?
So when I first started, what inspired me to get going is that in South Africa at the time, it was still apartheid. And it was just coming out of it with Nelson Mandela being released from prison. And I'd been asked by one of the largest gold mines in the world to please come around and innovate the way in which they did some training. But in order to get the gig, I had to go into a gold mine. So I put my hat on, my the torch, I was kitted out with the boots, everything. And I thought, this is quite cool. Yeah, gold mine, no problem. Until I put down the first shaft, I thought this is still okay. It was the deepest gold mine in the world at the time, Deep
wow.
Kloof. So when I got to level 2, I started feeling a little, can't breathe. By the time I got to level 3, I was really struggling. There's not enough air. We were crawling in the stopes, which are the little tunnels. And we came out at this piece of equipment, which looked at the time like this extremely expensive piece of equipment. And I said to the guys, like, why is no one using this? And they said, we cannot use this because there's no one down here that can read the instructions, and we can't train them to use it properly. They were putting their thumbprints as the mark
signature.
that they'd received their pay. And so this sophisticated piece of equipment was just lying there because no one could use it. And I just thought, how sad is that at this time there are people who still can't read and write, that still have, they're so disadvantaged in terms of their education. And I made up my mind, right, this is it. I'm going to make sure that people have a chance in the world, and, the doors of learning can open to them and opportunity can get there. But we're not going to get there if we do it the same old traditional way. Sit in your chair, listen to a one-way lecture. We've all been in those situations, and we know that none of that learning is embedded. And that's where I really wanted to think about ways in which we could transform the learning experience.
Brilliant. There are lessons in that, absolutely. And then I can imagine you apply that to the Play for Business, but it's the same lesson in the sense that you can't just go to an employer and say, I'd like your team members to sit around and play with toys. Just as you could have said to this mining company, the gold mining company, I want to teach you guys literacy. And they go, don't worry about it. No, it's fine. They're doing their thumbprints. They know how to drive stuff. It's fine. How do you then convert that into a business-focused message for them to say, yeah, we're going to pay you to do that?
And Ben, it's such a great question, that because I have been in, I cannot even begin to tell you how many meetings where everyone gets like really excited about the methodology, and they think, like we could do so much with this. This would work well with this team that's not functioning at a high enough level, and that team needs a bit of setting their goals. So they get all excited until some exec or some vice president of something says, well, like, what's it going to look like to our shareholders? What's it going to look like to the other stakeholders if they happen to walk past the window and see people playing with bricks? It's not going to go down well. So no, this is a bit too risky for me. So it's a challenge. It's much easier now, but if you can think back 15 years ago, what the perception was then, it was an uphill battle.
So what do you say to them?
First of all, you give them a lot of the theory. So there's a substantial amount of theory that sits behind it. The Lego group has done research, their case studies, their organizations, like top brand organizations in the world now use it. We've used it at Microsoft for their diversity and women in IT programs. We've used it at Coca-Cola for part of a change management piece. Shell uses it for all their strategic planning. So they're big brand names that are now behind it, which gives it a lot more gravitas and substance.
Yes, of course. I just had little flashbacks there to moments in my career where I did training, and I couldn't picture anything where it was a classroom-based, the lecture style. I can remember sitting in rooms like that, but I can't actually recall any of it. But I did see little moments of where we were doing, painting stuff or activities, or even assembling straw. But I can actually remember the lessons they were teaching us at the time. I could say, we were discussing this particular thing, and that this is why it was important, etc. So I can see how it sinks in. Is that the kind of the messaging that you're delivering?
100%, Ben. I may tell you, Billy, you can become one of our promoters here, because you absolutely get it.
Yeah, give me the T-shirt.
Yeah, you could definitely wear that, the cap as well. Because when people construct things with their hands, they're building it themselves. So without them realizing, even if they say, I'm not creative, the next thing they've built this magnificent, beautiful model of something something, and they're telling this deep, rich story about it that they never knew they had in them. And they remember it. They remember what they built. They remember what the people around them built, because it's visual, it's in 3D. They've had to put meaning into it, and then they've had to express and articulate it. So it really does sink in. We've seen, for example, people building things around company values, which are sometimes quite hard they're intangible, so they're not so easy to talk about. But suddenly there's this whole model about trust and what trust means to them and how they see it in the context of their own lives and the organization. Quite fascinating.
I want to, yeah, absolutely. I want to come to the business stuff in a moment, but for someone listening to this and thinking, okay, I get the concept, but what actually is it? How does it work? Or what would an employer get if they said, yep, I'm going to work with Play for Business?
So what they start off by getting is a pack of, obviously, bricks, because it does depend on you having some of the Lego around. And how it always works, Ben, is that people build their own individual model. It eventually becomes a group model or a collection of the models, but it always starts out with your interpretation of the question. So it starts quite easily with build a tower, build something quite concrete. But then we would start talking about the best or the worst experience that you've had over the past year, your own personal goals, how you see the goals of your team. But you always build it yourself. So 100% of the people build things themselves. There's no observers. You're either in or you're out. And then everyone has a chance to tell their own story. So if you think at some of these meetings that we've been sitting in over the past year in the Zoom, and somebody just goes on and on, it's like 1% of the people talking 99% of the time. And those voices that are a little more quiet and who probably sitting on the best ideas aren't always heard. But in a Lego Serious Play session, every single one of the participants rather is building and has their voice heard. And just that makes an enormous difference.
Yeah. I like the fact that there's no observers. You're in or you're out. So everyone feels safe because we're all in it together.
Exactly. Yeah. And the principle is that the answers are generally in the room. So if we're thinking about our vision for the next few years, or how we want to work together as a team, we want to set ourselves some guiding principles, everyone has input. And as they tell it, it becomes really quite an extraordinary experience. Eventually, the models will come together and there'll be a collective and group story. But it doesn't start with the group. It starts with the individual, who then ideates themselves, so makes their own individual contribution.
I love it. Love it. And so you described some of the company or the brand names, some of the company's clients and employer types. For people listening to this who might think, oh, I could refer business on to Play for Business, what is the ideal client type?
I would hope that people would get themselves trained up so that HR people would have the skills themselves so that they would be able to work with their own clients. And I don't even think there's any ideal type. I don't think that there's an industry we haven't touched. There's been profit and not for profit. There's been government. There's been local government. There's been major brands. There've been smaller businesses. It's so applicable across industry sector and applicable in a whole range of different ways. And I'm hoping that the HR people listening will get themselves trained up and then implement this within their own client organizations, just something different to bring to the organization, something unique that will help them stand apart and also benefit their client.
Right. How do they get trained up?
And they go to playforbusiness.com and
Okay.
enroll, and everything is online. And it's there's all the modules for them to go through. We've got videos of live sessions. So once they see the sessions in action, it's a lot easier to follow on what they have to do. There's modules on how to market it. There's a module on how to run it virtually, reading for all the theorists. There's more than enough to read. And then we've got live Q&A as well, so that they can ask questions, and I can help and guide them with suggestions for their own clients.
That's brilliant. So if I take it back, you mentioned some big name companies. I think you said Microsoft and others. When you started business, whether it's now or 30 years ago, did you start with the big brand names, or did you progress up the ladder? How did you make that change, if so?
I think that being in consulting is always a bit of a roller coaster. One minute you're up, and the next minute you're not so so far up as you thought you were. So sometimes we went for the big brand names, like the largest gold mine in the world at that stage was Anglo-American.
Yep.
But then the day after that, you could be with a startup or a smaller IT company that just needs to, have a team that's functioning without arguing with each other. So there's just such a variety. Call centers are really good for this because of their high rates sometimes of attrition. And so it's something to keep the staff motivated, to keep them with that bit of spark of interest, and this works exceptionally well.
Brilliant. Yeah. So keep your eyes open, obviously keep offering an excellent product or service, and then continue that path. Now, you mentioned that people can do training, but do you have a referral program or where you partner with other companies in the HR sector?
If they would like to refer people to us, we've got an affiliate program, and we're pretty generous with our affiliate discounts. So people would be able to benefit quite strongly from that as well. We're selling this at about €400. So it's not, I'm not saying it's not a big investment, but it's not the biggest possible investment. And I think from just selling one-to-one client, you would make that money back 5 times over in comparison to what you would charge them for just running one workshop.
Yeah. Well, for me, offering ancillary products and services, referring them in, is an opportunity to strengthen the relationship, which allows you to do more of what you're already offering. So if you're a recruiter,
agree with you more, Ben. You've articulated that far better than I ever could, but you're 100% right. Because you've got a client base. Most people have got, even if it's a very small client base, but to go and back to them with something that's fresh and innovative and a little bit different, I think even just sets you up with a higher level of credibility and a bit of status.
Yeah, and it's taking it from possibly offering just transactional work, which becomes commoditized, which means they can just go and look on price somewhere else. But if you've established moving yourself up that value chain, and who knows, you might find other things that are complementary again, in which case you're a vital part of their business.
And I think you make a very good point on that as well, Ben, because if the client is slightly larger, where there are a few different types of teams, it means that you could work with those teams for a whole range of different things. Some of them might be goal setting, some of them there might be some kind of conflict, some of them might be going through change, some of them might just want an end of year, something fun and different to do, a kind of lighter session. So you've got a whole range of different reasons to be in the same client and just dig deeper and deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't harp on this point, but I'm just picturing when I was doing consulting work, and when you're running a session like this, or if it's an employee feedback session or even a survey type session, the stuff you learn when you've got them in a room, just say you're running it with their management team, you've got 10 managers in there, they've all got their own different departments. in the course of play, they're going to tell you all the stuff that's driving them crazy in their jobs, because that's what people do. They vent.
Oh, just keep those ears open and you will have work there for the next year.
There we go. All right, we just worked out your marketing plan.
Yeah,
if you're listening to this.
exactly.
Brilliant. Denise, what do you sort of see for the future of the world of work and the future of HR? Because so much has happened in the last couple of years. What do you see happening down the line?
Well, it's so interesting, Ben, because if I had said even 3 years ago, pre-COVID, that we were going to train people in using this methodology online, people would have laughed at me. It's not possible. Nah. Everything must be in a room. Everything must be face-to-face. And there's no other way of doing it. And look where we are now. I mean, talking from Australia to Ireland, it's like nobody seems to care anymore. That their boundaries, or nobody's constrained by a training room any longer.
Absolutely. No, very true. Well, Denise, this has been fantastic. If people want to either become a client or if they want to refer business, become an affiliate partner or something similar, what should they do next?
Either contact me on LinkedIn. So I'm Denise Meyerson on LinkedIn. Or if you'd like to go to our website, it's play4business with the number 4business.com. And there's a whole lot more information about the program. I'm also happy to do a demo for anyone, and I love chatting about it. So no problem if you message me.
Excellent. So if you're listening to this on the go, check the show notes. We'll have the links to Denise's LinkedIn profile and also to the website, which is play4business.com. Denise, thank you very much for sharing your story and your advice. It's been fantastic, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Ben. I've loved chatting to you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks, and see you next time.